Well, Leah, there's so much going on, so much to talk about, but I actually feel like we should start with you. You've had a long connection, personal history with the Coyotes, and now to go through this process and cover it all and watch it unfold. Like, first off, if you can explain that connection, and then because of it, how are you doing right now?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, I would say. So my connection to this team stems back from 2005. I actually moved to the Valley then from Toronto, Canada. So, always been a hockey fan, but really connected with the Coyotes when I moved here. Just because, unfamiliar land and there was something familiar to me was hockey. My mom's first job when we moved here was actually selling board advertisements in the arena in Glendale. So as part of that, she went to all the home games, and as part of that, I got to go to all of the home games on the weekends, and I just fell in love with the team then. Been a fan my whole life, and it kind of, sparked an interest for me to pursue a journalism career to hopefully one day cover hockey and to, then have that happen where I got to cover the Coyotes. My childhood team was a dream come true. So this whole situation has been so layered because I've been a fan for 19 years and then I've been covering the team for 3. So my whole the majority of my life has been investing in this team either emotionally or for my work. So there's so many layers to everything that's happened, and some days it feels like I'm mourning the loss of my childhood team. Some days it's having to come to terms with how my job is going to change, all those things. It's just different every day.
It's one thing when it's personal, it's another thing when it's professional, but I feel you. It's both personal and professional for you. Totally understand. And I look back, like this whole possibility of the team having something happen, that's been simmering for years. Like the volatility of the Coyotes was no surprise, but the fact that it all unfolded so quickly in a matter of a couple weeks, did this catch a lot of people by surprise, how quickly it actually happened?
Yeah, it definitely did. It caught us by surprise. I think you go back to that Tempe vote, and I came in to work the next day and I was like 90% sure they were leaving. Not because of anything I knew. I just thought like that was it. They failed. And all of a sudden we're hearing, no, like they're gonna stay, they're gonna give them another chance. So I thought, okay, if they're sticking by the team after that, and then, then we hear the auction date. And like literally days before this news broke, we had the auction date. And from all that we knew, okay, they were going to let them get there. And then if they didn't succeed at the auction, I would understand if things, hit the fan. But it went from being really confident and excited because here's the auction date. We're going to finally have some answers, to less than 1 week later, this news kind of just coming directly out of left field. And it feels so strange to be surprised by something that seemed to be coming for so long. It was just every time something has been thrown at this team for the last 15 years, city council meetings, votes, like they've always had 9 lives. And I guess at this point they just had run out.
And now to watch the players show up in Salt Lake City, and to watch the front office, and to watch that whole thing happen at Delta Center, I guess it was last week now, just kind of like you guys watching that. I mean, that there's no way possible that can sit well. And it must feel so weird to watch people you were wholeheartedly pulling for and covering and documenting and so close with, now to see them in a totally different situation. And I don't mean to make this a gut-wrenching thing, but
no,
how do you describe that? There can be no good feelings, I think, about for all of you about that.
No, it's funny. We had an event last week, kind of a celebration of the Coyotes community, of a wake of sorts, a funeral at a bar in Tempe. And ESPN was on just showing playoff hockey. And in one of the intermissions, they were showing clips from that arrival. And all of the Coyotes fans were like, no, I can't look at it. For the thing that we keep saying, and I think this resonates with a lot of people, is it's like you got broken up with, and then the next week, your ex is dating someone new and posting pictures all over social media about it. That's what it feels like.
Right.
And it's not the fault of the players or the staff or anyone there. But it's so heartbreaking because it's a team that people have poured years of emotional and financial investment into, just to have it ripped away right when they're on the up to go to someone else. It just hurts.
No, Utah is getting a very good team, and that's what you all went through in Arizona, is following the kind of the redevelopment of the Coyotes on the ice. It kind of makes me wonder, from your perspective also, Utah was very persistent in trying to get a team somehow, some way. And when they put that thing out, I think it was January, February, to say that we're searching for expansion, but we're ready to take a team as soon as next year. Do you kind of feel like to some degree they were over persistent, maybe to the point of even poaching the Coyotes away?
I don't necessarily think that. I do think they were extremely persistent, and that's part of the reason why they ended up with the team. And
Yeah.
I think that's great for them. I don't think, based on the interviews I've seen with Ryan and Ashley Smith, it doesn't seem like this was even their ideal situation
Right,
because
right.
they're kind of like building the plane while it's flying. They're on the fly. I think if they could have picked their perfect scenario, they would have had a little bit more time to prepare. So I don't feel that they poached the team. It feels like the team got poached, but I don't feel like they poached the team, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because this isn't on Ryan Smith. This is on Alex Morello and the ownership here in Arizona rather than the Smiths. So yes, it feels that way, but I don't place blame on anybody but Alex Morello.
I think it's Taylor Swift who said, "It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me." If I guess that's applicable here. Well, okay. So on that note, I mean, you kind of look at the recent history, and you mentioned the Tempe vote about the arena project not being passed. That was about a year ago at this time. But even the fact that they were separated from the arena in Glendale, and then that forced them to pick something out, and the ASU opportunity happened at Mullet Arena. I feel like those two things in tandem, like not having a stable home and then going to a place where it was a bridge. Like Mullet Arena was a bridge to something, but that bridge wasn't fully built yet. And I feel like those missteps in reverse now, we can see how clearly those put this franchise in such a vulnerable position, right?
Yeah, it's so funny. You could even go back all the way to the early 2000s when they moved to Glendale in the first place as the first domino that led to where we are today. But certainly, the situation with Glendale not staying there, it's really complicated because it wasn't going to work in Glendale. So, like, I was all for leaving Glendale. The problem was Glendale was not going to offer the team a short-term situation. They said you need to sign long-term or you're not signing at all. So I understand the hesitancy to sign there. I wonder if they could have made it work if they really just sat down and put all of the rivalries and butting heads aside and just said, listen, like, we'll pay year to year at a premium, whatever it would be, to stay in Glendale. Because if Glendale had been the bridge, it would have been fine because honestly, the arena itself is it's a great hockey arena.
Yep.
It's NHL standard.
Yep.
And it's interesting. I remember when they were kind of in this flux and we did we did many shows about where could they possibly go. One of those was the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, which hosts the Arizona State Fair every year. We actually did a tour of the facility. It used to host the Phoenix Roadrunners, the ECHL team back in the day. It would have needed a lot of renovation, but they invested millions of dollars into making Mullet Arena NHL ready. I feel that they might have been able to do that there, and that would have been a much larger capacity. So there's a lot of what ifs, who knows, who can say if any of these moves would have made it okay. They definitely needed to get out of Glendale, but the unfortunate part is there weren't really any better options ready.
It just feels like the time started ticking as soon as that separation happened. And you're right. I mean, it was a good building. It was just in the wrong spot, obviously, out in Glendale. One last thing. Do you look at that separation? Was that an eviction? Did Glendale evict the Coyotes, or did the Coyotes mistakenly walk away from that?
I think there's a lot of misinformation about this because of the reports that came out about the Coyotes not paying their bills and taxes. That situation was not the reason for them leaving. The situation for them leaving was Glendale wanted a long-term lease and the Coyotes did not. Do I think that maybe they could have worked it out? Perhaps. But both parties were very stubborn in their stance, and Alex Morello decided to move them. Yeah. So yeah, that's the situation.
For people who aren't aware, Tucson is 90 minutes south of the Valley, the Phoenix metro area. And so the Roadrunners, the AHL team of the Coyotes, play there still. There's been talks about maybe splitting their seasons. Oh, by the way, Murillo owns the Roadrunners too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's been talks of maybe bringing them into the Phoenix area to play some games and kind of fill that void. What's the ideal situation for you with the Roadrunners look like? And also, how awkward is that is your now feeder team to the Salt Lake City team, the Utah team?
Yeah, it is incredibly awkward and incredibly weird. For me personally, the ideal situation is that they stay in Tucson. I don't think the Morellos need to be responsible for relocating two teams. I went to the U of A. I lived in Tucson for 4 years. I was there when the Roadrunners arrived. There's a fervent hockey fan base down in Tucson, and I think it would be extremely unfair to the community there, what they've started to build on the youth hockey side, to move the team to Tempe. And the split season also makes no sense because, like, people who work for the organization and play for it have families, have how is that supposed to work?
Right.
I personally think that Tucson is close enough to the Valley that if you wanted a hockey fix, they play weekend schedule so you can make a weekend out of it. I think that would be okay. I really, really think that they should stay in Tucson. I think it's the right thing to do. And I don't know what Tempe's appetite is to have a Morello-owned hockey team come back to Mullet Arena. I really don't. I don't know if he's done a good job maintaining the relationships there that they would be open to that. And on the fan base side, I don't know how people feel about supporting a Morello-owned hockey team if they were to come up to the Valley.
Well, speaking of that, when Gary Bettman ended that press conference the other day, he said, quote, "We shall return." And I thought that was such a weird way to end it. Like, who's we? When are you returning? And returning for what? I just think it's insane that the entire possibility of the NHL back in Arizona lies in the hands of Alex Morello as owner. He has this 5-year window to produce a building. And if he does, he's guaranteed an expansion franchise. They do the whole expansion draft situation, but like it's insane to think that the NHL, there's only one way back for fans, and it's the same way that didn't work out before. Is that, am I obvious in not understanding that?
No, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's so interesting. There's a group of people who, and because for us, we talked about we've been very close to the organization, and some of my co-hosts, they've worked for the organization. They experienced working under Alex Morello firsthand. So perhaps there's some things that we know a little bit more than the fan base does, and because there's a group of people who are saying, "Why are you being so negative about this? Why are you hoping that he doesn't get it done? Why are you saying that he won't get it done? This is our only chance." And I don't think it is the only chance. I think it's what the NHL has presented as a way that Alex Morello wouldn't sue the league for poaching the team from him. He actually had more power in the situation, because if the NHL just took the team away, he'd probably sue them, which is his right to do so. They danced around this whole situation in every way they could to extract the team from Alex Morello and not have Alex Morello go scorched earth. Maybe they set it up. I don't know. I don't know if there's ulterior motives, if they're trying to have him set him up to fail, or if they're trying to set him up to succeed. I genuinely can't say. There's definitely a group who say he's our only chance. He's our best chance. We want him to succeed. But I would say that the majority of people don't want to see him succeed, because let's just say he does and he owns an NHL team again. Are things going to be different? Obviously, they would have a building at that point, but there's other parts of running an NHL team that aren't just having an NHL building. As we saw when he was the owner out in Glendale, there were a lot of missteps there as well. So I don't know if it's the best scenario. Craig Morgan has reported that there are local groups here interested. It would be very interesting to see if Alex Morello, stepped aside or was no longer an option, what would happen. Unfortunately, it might take a few extra years, but maybe that would be the best thing in the end.
Well, this upcoming land auction seems like a pretty pivotal moment at the end of June, whether he gets those 100 acres or so, just north of the Loop 101. But the other part about it is he's said insistently that this is all going to be privately financed, no votes, no nothing. Nothing's going to stand in the way. Then recently it's uncovered that he wants to make this area a theme park district. And I'm thinking, well, what's the connection there? What's the real backstory? Turns out if it's a theme park district, he's not responsible for property tax. He's not responsible for income tax on that property. He can also capture sales tax from anywhere on that property to help pay for the project. It's almost unbelievable that, here we go again with questions and things that seem one way, but are actually something different.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I am so disconnected from all of that because we dove so in the weeds with the whole Tempe thing. I knew more about taxes and than I've ever wanted to know. You get into sports thinking you're going to talk about the game, and then you're watching city council meetings streamed online. It's interesting. Building a sports stadium in any part of the U.S. is complicated. I mean, we just saw what happened in Kansas City, which is a prolific sports town, and they're not even wanting to invest, public money. It's a complicated issue, and I don't think there's no such thing as a free lunch. So you could say it's privately funded, but
right.
There's clearly some caveats to that. So I'm not really sure. Again, we'll see what happens on June 27th.
All right, last thing for you here, just instinct, gut instinct. And you've kind of led me to believe that there are other chances, there are other ways for Arizona to get the hockey team back. I mean, is this a 3-year thing, a 5-year thing, a 15-year thing? Like, what do you think? Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. What do you think is, and trust me, I'm saying it from somebody who understands, what do you think is actually going to happen here? What's most realistic?
I'm not sure. I really, really don't know. I think, they keep saying this 5-year window. I think 5 years I don't know if that's going to happen. I just don't. My gut is telling me it's going to be more like 7 to 10 in any scenario. Yeah. That's just what my gut is saying. There's no information to back this up. We don't know what's going to happen on June 27th. We don't know what's going to happen with, if he gets the land, if he starts to develop the land, if everything's going to go perfectly and be on track, maybe it will be 5 years. But, at this point with this team, my whole approach is if you expect the worst, your expectations will be met or exceeded. So I'm expecting the worst for what's going forward. I know that sounds horrible to say, but it's just kind of the situation that we're in when it comes to the Coyotes.
I know you and the crew at PHNX Sports did your last Coyotes-based show yesterday, and I know that's been hard on you, and I really, I can appreciate the work you've all been doing. It's great work. It's just so unfortunate work. So hang in there and keep in touch, and if there's anything I can ever do for you, I'm happy to do it, and just wish you all the best, and I hope for you that it happens sooner than later. You get a team back.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.